So Baldur's Gate 3 is the newest CRPG on the market, released by Larian Studios, and also just happens to be my very first entry into this genre of RPG. So one of the big questions might be, what is a CRPG? It's a bit of a weird initialism, but the C stands for computer, so it's a computer role-playing game, which is an update to WRPG, or Western role-playing game. Basically, when RPGs were first being made into video games, there were two very different approaches. In the West, you had games like Ultima and Wizardry, and then to the East, in Japan, you had games like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. And so that's how we got WRPG and JRPG. And then at some point, WRPG became CRPG. But nowadays, I feel like none of those initialisms makes any sense. Final Fantasy has released on computers, Baldur's Gate 3 will be on consoles, and the gameplay and style of JRPGs aren't just created in Japan. So Baldur's Gate 3 is one of those games that I just can't put down, and when I'm not playing it, it's on my mind, living in my head, rent-free. I've just been so captivated by the world, the characters, and the huge emphasis on choice. And that huge emphasis on choice starts right when you create your character. There's a lot of choices to be made right out the gate. So the first thing that you choose is, what race do you want to be? So there's 11 races to choose from, and every race comes with its own unique features. Many of the races also have sub-races, which not only affect your appearance, but can also have their own unique features. So there is a lot to consider here. There were also 12 classes to choose from, and each one of those have unique actions, features, spells. And despite playing so many JRPGs and MMOs over the years, I honestly didn't recognize most of them. So as a new player to this genre, there was quite the learning curve. And you know, that was only compounded once you get to the background selection, where you have another 11 choices, and each one of those choices come with their own unique skills. Skills that can be both useful in combat and how you interact with NPCs. So of course, you can also customize the appearance of your character, and there's a ton of variety here as well, especially if you go through the hairstyles. But if I were to nitpick, I wish I had more granular control over the faces. I would have loved to have been able to go in and change the fullness of the cheeks or the shape of the nose, things like that. With the way it is right now, sometimes I couldn't find any faces that I was happy with. So now, let's get into the actual gameplay. So let's start with the combat. I think that the combat system in this game is fantastic. There's a ton of depth and variety presented. But as a new player, one of my biggest nitpicks would be how overwhelming it was when I first started. I was used to JRPGs and MMOs, where you only had to parse a few abilities when you started the game. In Baldur's Gate 3, you are presented with a hotbar full of abilities to parse over. It's almost like being given a max-level character in an MMO, and then being thrust directly into combat. However, once everything started to fall into place, the combat became very addicting. I started to love all the complexity. There are just so many ways to go about any given encounter, so many different choices that you can make. You can lure enemies to cliffs and then shove them off, or shoot out bridges underneath their feet. You can set up explosive traps. There's just a lot of freedom here. And when you know there's an encounter incoming, you can actually separate your party out, send your ranged DPS up a hill or into the rafters to gain advantage. You can also try to use your rogue to stealth up to the enemy boss to gain a critical strike, or shove them off a cliff. The game does a great job at making you feel smart, that you came up with a clever solution to whatever encounter you are facing. And then there's also the dialogue, another really important aspect of the gameplay. So all those choices that you made when creating your character weren't just for the combat, they also have an impact on the ways that you can interact with NPCs. So for example, my first character was a paladin, and because paladins are looked at as being pillars of justice, they could use that when interacting with certain NPCs. But not all NPCs are influenced in the same way, and sometimes it's better to let your rogue take lead when you want to deceive, or letting your fighter take the lead when you want to intimidate. And by using your silver tongue, you can sometimes completely avoid combat, make allies out of would-be enemies, and more easily gain entry into closed-off areas. Choices are also present with which factions you want to support, and you can absolutely pledge your support to one, and then backstab them and join their enemies. So another important aspect of the gameplay are the dice rolls. Now technically the dice are always being rolled in the background, but for certain situations, such as some dialogue choices or whenever you are picking locks, you actually get to see the dice being rolled. And that can add a lot of tension to those moments. So yet again, your choices you made for your character come back into play. Certain skills and abilities give you advantage, adding to your die total, and other times it puts you at a disadvantage, subtracting from your total. Now, you could save scum and then just keep trying for the rolls that you want, but I found that, at least from my initial playthrough, that it's better to just roll with the punches. I actually failed some pretty devastating checks that led to scenarios that I obviously would have preferred not to have happened, but this also means that I had the story go into directions that I would have never expected. Speaking of the story, it starts off with an interesting premise, and as you delve deeper into it and learn more about what's going on, it just keeps getting better and better. So the basic premise is that you and your party have all been captured by mind flayers and infected with the parasite. And it's only a matter of time before you all turn into mind flayers yourselves, so we need to go out and find a cure. But it isn't a linear story. You are presented with many options on how you go out and find this cure. And as the story continues on, those objectives change, and there are plenty of twists and turns along the way. So having a non-linear approach to the story means that it needed an open world. But it's not exactly a full-blown open world with limitless freedom to explore, because there are some locations locked behind the story. Regardless, it's still a huge map full of stuff to find, and it doesn't suffer from that problem that a lot of other open world games have. You know, where you have a lot of empty space, but nothing to do. So, what's a good story without great characters? Luckily, Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't have that problem. The main cast of characters, they are all fantastic, featuring long quest chains spanning across the entire narrative, delving deep into their backstories, and fully fleshing them out. And as you build relationships with your party members and earn their trust, you can actually guide them to completely change their quest goals. These are pivotal moments, and if your relationship isn't strong enough, well, then they can turn on you. You can also enter into romantic relationships with anyone in your party, and by doing that, learn even more personal things about them, such as what they look like naked, and if they like to top or bottom. And then you have all the various NPCs throughout the world, and I found so many memorable interactions speaking with them. It's just a ton of fun going through a new town and starting up dialogues. You can also speak to all of the animals, given that you have the right spell or scroll, and honestly, that might be one of my favorite things to do. They are just always so entertaining. And what really sells all this is that every single line of dialogue is voice acted with some really great performances. The only nitpick I have, and it's a very minor one, is that sometimes you can hear a discrepancy in the sound, as if some dialogue was recorded in a different studio, or using a different microphone. So speaking of sound, now let's take a look at the soundtrack. The composer, Borislav Slavov, I think did a really good job with the music. All of the tracks are beautifully composed, and do a great job at enhancing the gameplay by making battles feel more epic, adding tension to dire situations, or just setting some atmosphere while exploring the world or going into a town. And you know, what else can I say? I love the use of strings, woodwinds, and horns. I grew up learning to play the clarinet, and played in orchestra for many, many years, so that kind of music has been a huge part of my life, and it still resonates a great deal with me. Now, I wish I could say that the game was flawless, but I did run into some issues. From very minor, like during cutscenes, sometimes NPC models would be stuck inside the wall. Not game-breaking, but it certainly was immersion-breaking, to even more severe, such as cutscenes not loading in. That made the game completely unplayable. I couldn't interact with anything, couldn't get into the menus, and the only way to close the game was through the task manager. There were also times where quests would break, and I'd have to restart at an earlier point if I wanted to finish it. Luckily, there is a very generous autosave, and whenever issues occurred that forced me to restart, I never lost too much progress. The only other issue I had, outside of those glitches, was with the inventory management. And this really is more of a nitpick, but this is a game where you pick up everything that isn't stapled to the floor, and that puts a lot of junk into your inventory, which you split between all of your party members and a camp chest. Even with all the sorting options and the search function, it could still be very tedious and cumbersome to manage, and if you need to find a specific item, like say for a quest, and you can't remember where you put it, get ready for a headache. But overall, I thought that this was an amazing game, and that the hype around it was completely justified. This has been an eye-opening experience for me. As I said at the start, I am an old-school JRPG gamer, and this opened up a whole new world of gaming for me. Anyways, that is all for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, bye!